Hi guys, and welcome to Petrolheads London. And it's been a while, and I'm here with the F-Type. And there's a reason for that, because it's almost 3 years since I've had this car. And I wanted to talk to you about, well, what's 3 years of ownership been like? And would you buy one, or what are the things you need to know? So let's jump in the car, let's go for a ride, and we'll have a quick talk about some of the great stuff around this car and maybe some of the not so great stuff. 3 years is quite a long time for me to have a car like this, or a car, full stop. I've been through quite a few, just because I move on and get bored rather than having destroyed them or anything like that. And this car has had its ups and downs, but when you look at it, it is just absolutely beautiful. And that's one of the things I've always struggled with, is when I think about selling it, I just jump in it and I take one look at those beautiful lines and I just think, no, this is still a car for me. But anyway, let's have a look at my 3-year ownership of a 3-litre V6 F-Type. This was the original platform in which it was built on, the convertible. Arguably, I think the coupes are probably more popular and more practical. But anyway, let's jump inside, go for a spin and have a talk about, well, why this is such a great car. Right, let's crack on. So, one of the things with this car is I find is you just tend to drive it in the automatic mode, which is, well, a bit boring. So what you really need to do is stick this car in dynamic. Now that does affect your fuel efficiency. Now we're just having a little trundle around today, so it's not really going to make much difference today, but it's something worth looking into. So I bought this car because I had a C63 AMG, naturally aspirated 6.3 V8, and frankly I needed a fuel bowser to make that thing make any sort of distance. So for me, I wanted something a bit more fuel efficient. It doesn't really give that kind of fuel efficiency uplift I was hoping for, and again, who buys a sports car to be fuel efficient, right? So it's worth noting that if you're going to have fun in this car, it's going to drink some fuel. Now I probably get 20s, I would say, on average. If I'm just doing very short trips around London, I'll probably get less than that. But I don't really drive this car for that. Now, everyone bangs on about the boot space, and I've done a few videos about this, kind of trying to prove them wrong, because let's face it, I bought one, so I wanted to prove that it was the right car. And honestly though, it is not the best boot in the world. It's an incredibly awkward shape, and it doesn't take an awful lot. And unlike other cars, you get no real space behind the seats. So actually, trying to go on long journeys or trips is really quite difficult with any amount of stuff, although I did bring wine back from France, as you would have seen on previous videos. It's an incredibly easy car to drive this, and that kind of gets me onto the thing I always really talk about when I talk to me about this car, is its split personality. And the fact that you've got this dynamic mode where it all goes red and the dash goes red, like even that gets you excited and ready to go. Sharpens up the steering, sharpens up the throttle response, and just generally makes this car what it should be. So you're kind of driving that all the time. But that split personality that you can then sit on a motorway and cruise along quite happily in quite comfortable style. It's Jaguar trim, so it's, you know, 99% of it's pretty damn good. The rest of it, there are a few niggles I have around bits of plastic and stuff like that, but then if you look at other cars on the market, I wouldn't say they're the worst. So the split personality for me is a real awesome trait of this car. But the real thing that I like about it is actually, well, actually it's probably wrong to say I like about it. One of the charms of this vehicle is how other people perceive it. I have never driven a car where I've had so much respect from other people, and I'm not sure why, because it's not a real out and out sports car. And actually the more I've had it and the more I've driven it, I see it more of a competitor for the Boxster or Cayman at best, rather than a 911, which I've had before. So it feels like a bit of a climb down from there. Definitely from a drivability point of view. The other thing is just some of the things that are like really outdated, like the sat nav system on here is, well, just I really don't like it. As I mentioned, there's the modes as well, so you've also got this handy little one here which goes into rain mode, and do you know what, I've used that once in 3 years properly with any kind of a vengeance. I used it about a month ago when we had a truckload of snow and I was on the way to take my car to the garage, and so I had to take it out, and that's the only time I did it. And all it really does is kind of dampen the throttle response, so it means that you're not wheel spinning everywhere, in order to stop you basically losing control in slippy conditions. So let's talk about tyres. So I've done about 12 to 15,000 miles I think in this car over 3 years, which is not a lot really, is it, considering I use it all the time. But it's not a particular tyre muncher. But then I would also say I don't really love the tyres on this car. I have found at times that the grip on the rear has been, well, poor at best, and I do find it a bit, yeah, unnerving and slight lack of confidence in it. So I would probably try and put some stickier tyres on it. This has got Michelin's on it I think at the moment. So but yeah, overall hasn't really cost me a lot in that. Servicing has been pretty standard, as you will have known from some of my videos. I picked up a few bits and pieces on this car over the years I've had it that have come up on warranty. A few little things like the switches on the steering wheel, one lot broke, so they replaced them, but they replaced them with the new version, and so then the ones on the right didn't match, which really annoyed me. But as luck would have it, and no, I didn't tamper with them, the right hand ones which control the cruise control broke as well. So yes, I was relatively happy about that. Yeah, there's a few things that have gone wrong. I had a problem with the diff. I've had a lot of negative and positive chat about that video. I don't really know what happened. What I do know is I identified a thunking noise, very light in the background as you moved off, and I spent a long time working with the Jaguar technicians to try and find out what the source of that was. It felt like an engine mount bolt or something like that, and it took us a little while in order to track it down because it wasn't a particularly common fault. As a result, they replaced the diff, so I was quite grateful for them changing that, but it did take us an awful long time to actually get it resolved. This brings me on to Jaguar servicing. Now, main stealers, as I like to call them, are not always the best on servicing costs, are they? And in this particular instance, yeah, they're quite expensive, but I also felt that their way in which they deal with customers is quite convoluted and quite hard work. For me, what that meant was that quite often you were having to report a fault or a small niggle, like I had a light stay on actually under one of the door handles, which kept draining the battery. It took me 2 hours for them to get that message through properly. Turned out they told the guy it was the light under the door, which isn't what I said and wasn't written down on the card. That said, they have picked up a lot of the few faults and upgrades that needed to happen software wise and stuff through the warranty process, and I probably wouldn't have bought this car without one. I would definitely say if I was going to buy one of these cars again, I'd have a warranty on it without a shadow of a doubt. What I didn't mention about the tyres was the cost of them. So they've cost me around about £220 for tyres. The back tyres are actually much wider than the front, so you're always going to pay more for it. But I don't think they're extortionate. They're kind of what you would expect of a car of this ilk. So the only real thing to leave you with is I had a few worries and preconceptions when I bought this car, and they were things like, so the rising air vent, which look beautiful, I just was like, this is something that's going to go wrong, isn't it? It's something that's going to go really wrong. But it hasn't. It hasn't, touch wood, gone wrong yet. The other thing is the exhaust valve button. You can open up those exhaust valves. and it gives you those pops and crackles. And I tell you what, I've talked about kind of a lot of the costs and negatives and stuff like that, but the joy this car keeps giving you is amazing. It sounds amazing, it drives really well. I would say that I've kind of found, having driven a lot of other cars, especially doing YouTube, that I find that it's quite vanilla in terms of the driving experience. You're not going to get a sports car experience in this. 3-year ownership is the question people would probably ask you is, would you buy it again? And I think that's always a tough question for me, because like even like a 911, which I absolutely loved, I'm not sure I'd buy again just because I've had one. This I would buy again for many of the things I've mentioned today, but same story as the 911, because I've had one, I probably wouldn't necessarily do that. But for me, the buy it again question is more like, how much did I love it and enjoy it? And I do love it, but for me it's just not as reliable as they should be. As I said, I've only had a few niggles, and I've not read on the forums of any major issues. Trying to get them resolved is hard work. I think the build quality is just not up there with German cars, but then who wants a German car and be all the same? I know I've got one, but anyway, let's not get into that. There are a few plasticky bits in here. The options scenario drives me mad. The fact that everything's a damn option in this car, and I know they're like, oh, we're following the Porsche model, or we're following the BMW model. Net, when I look at the cost of running this compared to other cars I've owned, that it's cost me a lot more. Like, I really don't. I think it's pretty comparable. And I also think that Jaguar have become far more reliable and better build quality than they were. Even when I've been in newer versions of this is a 2013 model, it's one of the very early ones, it feels a lot tighter than this one. Anyway, I think I've rambled on enough. I just wanted to give you a bit of a view around my ownership of this car. Thank you for watching Petrolheads London. Please remember to like and subscribe, and hopefully plenty more to come.